Hello, good morning, and welcome to this Dawn Busters Taste Challenge. Had to do it 3 times to get it to go live. Something wrong with their platform right now, and I know there's something wrong because YouTube yesterday sent me a question saying, "Are you noticing any problems with when you search? Is something wrong, or is there problems with that?" And I said no, but I can see there's some kind of internal technical problems. They wouldn't have been asking that question. So they must be getting some feedback from people saying something ain't right. It's been going on for about 3 days. But anyway, that is done. Here we are. It's not daylight quite yet. I have two 80 proof American blended whiskeys. This is Kentucky Gold Kentucky blended whiskey. Introduced in 1956, blended and bottled in Kentucky by Quality Control Distilling Company, Bardstown, Nelson County, Kentucky. Well, that's Heaven Hill. And it's aged 3 years, and it's 80% grain neutral spirits, 20% alcohol. In the United States, this is not other countries. In the United States, you are allowed to add up to 80% grain neutral spirits to a whiskey, as long as you put that on the bottle. It has to be disclosed. If it's a bourbon, a blended bourbon, you can go up to 49% grain neutral spirits. Once again, you got to put it on the bottle. Okay, age statement is required if it's less than 4 years. This is 3 years, 36 months. Here's the competitor, and I never could find out when it was introduced, even though it's saying it's trademarked. I looked up the trademark, and for whatever weird reason, I could not find it. The U.S. government didn't have it listed, and they're supposed to have a database with all the trademarks. But if you can find out, let me know, because I sure cannot. Classic Club. All right. There's 2 martini glasses, 2 paddles, a shield with a crown, CC. Semper Delectamentum. I think that means always delicious in Latin. American blended whiskey, aged and mellowed in oak barrels, which is a meaningless statement because all whiskey has to be aged and mellowed in oak barrels. Barrel matured. So they're just putting it on there like it's something special, but it's not. The timeless spirit of the cocktail. All right, this is another one of these from I.W.A. Distilling Company Limited. You say, I never heard of that company. Yeah, well, it's an alias for the Sazerac Company. Okay. So this is probably coming from Buffalo Trace Distillery, but it could be coming from one of the other Sazerac distilleries, Barton, over in Bardstown. It could be coming from Glenmore Distillery over there in Owensboro. They have 3 distilleries in Kentucky. It's not coming from Louisiana because they only do a small amount of distilling in New Orleans at the Sazerac house, and it's not big enough to do like bottling and all of that. Now, I'm not saying they wouldn't expand it, but they need a different building for that because it's just a showcase distillery. Just to kind of show you how they do it when they're making their Sazerac rye is what they usually do over there. I bought this at Total Wine and More, and it's like $15.99. I think that's the price, like $15.99 or $16.99. I could look it up, but it's always in stock. They got the regular glass bottles, and then they have these, but I don't think they had the glass the day I bought it, so I just went with the handle. I would have preferred the glass, although you get a better price per ounce with these. The glass would be like $8.99, $7.99. But anyway, Classic Club is a line. There's gin, rum, vodka, maybe a 100 proof vodka also. There's this one, the American blended. Don't know about bourbon. There is brandy for sure because I got a bottle. And there's definitely Canadian whiskey. So now, is it a line for Aldi? Not Aldi. What am I thinking? Is it a line of liquor for Total Wine and More? Is it like a house line? It could be. I've never seen it anywhere else, to my knowledge. I.W.A. Distilling, There's a whole line of that at Walmart. Caliber thing. Gin, brandy, not brandy. Gin, rum, vodka, citrus vodka edition, Canadian whiskey. Don't recall tequila. I think at Total Wine they do have the Classic Club tequila, silver and gold, and maybe there's a triple sec. I believe they make some liqueurs. Okay, but anyway, I think they make these lines for, like, there was one for CVS Pharmacy called Grand Legacy, and it was the same thing: rum, gin, Scotch whiskey, even, which I missed the boat on that one. Probably didn't miss much. It looks like they got rid of that. I think CVS decided it was not really selling, so they just cut it, because around the time it stopped showing up at CVS, it started showing up in independent liquor stores. So I think what CVS did was they released it to independent stores to sell it. And, you know, they told the distributor, look, we'll sign off on it. Let them have it because we don't want it. And they said, fine. Now, CVS does still carry their line of cream liqueur, Irish whiskey cream liqueur. I think it's called Connolly's or O'Connell or O'Connor. You know, they make them all sound Irish names. That's there. That's from a famous Irish distillery, Mary and Company. And they still have the bourbon, the Jethro T. Boots Kentucky Straight Sour Mash Bourbon. That probably did okay. And it wasn't attached to the Grand Legacy line, you see, although it was coming from the same people. So, oh golly. So, gonna need a little bit more of the Classic Club. So Winn-Dixie has their own lines called Winn-Dixie, WD Liquors from Sazerac. CVS Pharmacy, that's two, or did have it. That's two, but one gone. Classic Club at Total Wine and More, Caliber at Walmart, and Albertsons used to have their line called Albertsons. But when Albertsons bought out all these other grocery chains, if you look at the Albertsons corporate website, they must own 12 different grocery chains. Well, they didn't need, there's no sense to have Albertsons Canadian whiskey sold at, Jewel Osco. That would confuse the customers, obviously. So I started noticing about 8 years ago, maybe 6 years ago, they started rebranding everything. You didn't see Albertsons Canadian whiskey anymore, but all of a sudden you started seeing Canadian Crest, which is very common there. You didn't see Albertsons American Blended whiskey. All of a sudden you started seeing 75 South, which is referencing the Interstate 75 that runs through Kentucky. Same thing. Albertsons rum, all of a sudden it was King Square rum. Albertsons tequila, all of a sudden was Bandolero. So that is the situation on that. That way, right, you could sell it at any of their subsidiaries and it would not confuse the customer. Now, if Albertsons and Kroger had merged, then you may have seen a different approach. I don't know. I do believe Kroger gets their own line of liquor because Kroger has their own liquor stores in some states. In Louisiana, they would just sell it out the store because Louisiana doesn't restrict liquor sales in a grocery store or even a convenience store. But I don't know what the liquors are called. It might just be called Kroger Rum or something. I don't know if they use one of those cute names. Okay, these are both amber, as you can see. Now, the strange thing about Kentucky Gold, let me see if it'll focus. Yeah, there you go. The strange thing about Kentucky Gold, they don't have it listed on the Heaven Hill website anymore. They used to. You look under product specifications, it's not there. Was it discontinued? Possibly, because if you look at the product specifications list, it says it was updated in November. Updated in November of last year, 2024. This bottle says 4 at the bottom. It says 24 twice. So this could have been some of the last that they put out, and then they cut it. Don't know why they would, but maybe it didn't really sell. This is a brand new bottle. You could tell it was just fresh, new. It looked like they had 12 on the shelf, like a whole case. Now, if I start seeing bottles later in the year that say 25 at the bottom, then I'll know it's not discontinued. But I doubt I'll be looking that intently for it because it's not that important to me, right? Definitely not a private label because I've seen it at a convenience store in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, on Louisiana Highway 30. Found it at Star 2 days ago on Louisiana Highway 49. And I found it at International Market, the distilled spirit specialty version of it, a slightly different version of it. Not really different. I couldn't even tell them apart, but there is some technical differences with that one. And that was on right off of Boulevard. So I found this at 3 different locations in Louisiana. Let's see the price at Total Wine and More. What the heck can't hurt? Pretty sure Total Wine does not sell Kentucky Gold at any of their stores. Oh yeah, they sell American blended whiskey. No doubt about that. It's just they pick which brands they want to sell. They can't stock 200 things. Okay, let's see. I know they have the TX and the Rebecca Creek from Texas. Those are more little high hat, expensive American blended whiskeys, I think. Okay, let's see. Another common one in Louisiana is Kentucky Dale. That's actually more common. Kentucky Dale. It's from Sazerac, Buffalo Trace. The lady on the phone at Buffalo Trace kept calling it a blended bourbon. She said, "Oh, Kentucky Dale." When I brought it up, she said, "That's a really popular bourbon that we sell." I guess she meant it was blended with bourbon, but it's technically called a blended whiskey, not a blended bourbon. Classic Club. Let's check it out. Tequila, silver and gold, Canadian whiskey. Classic Club blended whiskey is $15.99, but the Canadian whiskey is $14.99. So the import's cheaper than the one from Kentucky, if that can be explained. London Dry Gin, spice rum, silver and gold rum. Yeah, and then they're showing the VSOP, brandy with natural flavors. I have a bottle. It's over flavored though. It's thumbs down. I should have bought the glass bottle. I'm stuck with that big bottle of that stuff. Kentucky Gold. It's not going to show up. Nah. Nope. No loss there. Now, interesting thing about this. You say these cannot be interesting. American blended whiskey is not interesting. Well, it's interesting to people that are interested in it, that are interested in products that exist, right? Kentucky Gold is 80% grain neutral spirits, 20% straight whiskey, almost assuredly bourbon, but we can't say for sure. But that you'd probably win money on that bet. Classic Club is 100% whiskey. There's no grain spirits added, grain neutral spirits. It's all aged whiskey because they don't have a disclosure on it. It's nothing on there talking about natural flavors and caramel color added. So I have 2 bottles like that. I have that Calvert Extra 100% grain whiskey, 100% whiskey blend, and this one. Is it Buffalo Trace's most exquisite whiskey? Yeah, you know it's not. It's probably stuff that didn't develop correctly, and they just blended it and bottled it and asked Total Wine. You want a deal? And they say, yeah. And it's $15.99. Will that make a difference in this tasting challenge? Taste challenge? It might. So some people use like terms that are too generalized. I've read articles about American blended whiskey, and they say American blended whiskey, which contains 80% grain neutral. No, what they should say is American blended whiskey, which usually contains grain neutral spirits in the blend, comma, so, and continue writing the article, because there are many out there that don't contain any grain neutral spirits, and they just blended different whiskeys blended together. Okay, but the thing about it is none of the whiskeys in the blend are a majority. You see, it might be 33% corn, 33% rye, so that brings you to 66%. And it might be 34% malted barley whiskey. So if nothing gets a majority, then it's not a bourbon or a rye whiskey or a wheat whiskey or a malt whiskey, because there's no majority grain. Totally allowed. Just makes it different. You don't have a predominance of a certain grain. Now in Kentucky Gold, it's probably 90% corn, because the grain neutral spirits, which is 80% of the product, is almost assuredly maize or Indian corn, or as we say in the United States, just corn. And then the bourbon is mostly corn. So you're looking at it in a way, a corn whiskey. And it's formatted in a different method, so it's called American whiskey, a blend, or a blended American whiskey. Does that make sense? I think it does. This smells like bourbon mainly. I mean, if you gave this to somebody cold and didn't tell them what it was, their guess could be bourbon. They might say, oh, that's a bourbon, or a whiskey of some sort. They would not guess Irish. They wouldn't say Scotch. They wouldn't say Japanese, but they would probably say some kind of American, or they might say Canadian whiskey. That would be almost definitely what they would guess. But then it would be confusing after that to try to pinpoint what it was. Yeah, and this one, I'm about to spill it. This one is maybe more just like generalized grain over here, which is why I'm saying that blend thing here. All right, taste. So in the United States, there's different way to do these things, and there's different legal definitions of when you do it that way, but the final result might be kind of like the same. The ultimate result may not make a whole lot of difference when you taste it. Is this one smooth? Not, well, it's a little bitey, to tell you the truth. There's oak, some vanilla, not so much. Could it be flavored? Could be. They don't have to tell you on the bottle. Does it taste like it's flavored? No, it doesn't. But at only 2%, I'm sorry, 2.5% or less, you may not pick it up. It's just like a little tweak. So it just tastes like very ordinary whiskey that no one would ever buy to sip neat at room temperature like I'm doing. You know, these are bought for making inexpensive cocktails, like if you're at a fish fry or you're at a get together playing cards or something. That's it. It's not going to be for erudite, deep, speculative whiskey tasting, unless you're really, really, really not picky. This one has more vanilla. There's oak, but it's not a bitey thing. I remember the Kentucky Gold, the one I bought years ago. That thing was bitey. It was like, yikes. That was not a good product. but this one is. Could they have improved it? It's possible. Could it just be the case that it's different blends going into it year to year because of whatever they got left over and they want to cast off? That's an even more likely scenario. And they're probably figuring the people who buy this aren't going to examine it that closely. And like I say, if they're mixing it with whatever, hot chocolate even, or whatever the case, whatever people do with it, then it's not going to really matter, you know. So it's not going to be entered into competition. You know, they're not going to have it at the San Francisco World Spirits Competition. Very utilitarian product. If you want to call it utility bourbon, utility American whiskey, that's fine. That would be a perfect. Same thing with Kentucky Dale, which is all over Louisiana. The Heaven Hill Kentucky blended whiskey, Quality House Kentucky, which I'm not seeing much anymore. It seems like that's fading away. I don't know why. But Kentucky Dale certainly is out there doing its thing. Now, Mathern's doesn't sell any more American blended whiskey except for the Seagram's 83. Oh, and Seagram's 7 Crown. I don't know what I'm talking about. No liquor store is going to stop selling 7 Crown. But Seagram's 83, yeah, and that's nice. That's technically a distilled spirit specialty, but once again, no one cares. So it's on the bourbon. It's in the liquor section. No, and you know, I'm sorry, in the whiskey section, no one's going to pay mind to that. Tastes nice, nothing great. Do either one of these taste like ethanol? And like I used to say, sometimes with these really low end ones, they taste like alcohol at the doctor's office. You know, you cut your leg and they're putting the alcohol on your wound to clean it. No, they're not that extreme. Oh, I hear a lot of sounds bad out there. A lot of sirens. Not that extreme, but yeah, they don't need to. And once again, they don't need to put on there that they age it in oak. Any whiskey sold in America or made in America has to be aged in oak. Okay, so that's a redundant statement. It's like if you had a bourbon and it said this is mostly corn. Yeah, that's the only way it could be bourbon. Okay, or telling you the bourbon's aged in new charred oak barrels. All bourbon by law has to be aged in new charred oak barrels. If you decided to use a reused barrel, a used barrel, well, then it would be just whiskey. And immediately it would be blended whiskey by virtue of the fact that almost all bourbons are blended with corn, rye, malted barley, and or wheat, or with wheat, both. There's no restriction on that. Anybody tells you otherwise, they're wrong. All right. So if anybody tells you what grains have to be in bourbon and they mention anything other than 51% corn, they don't know what they're talking about. There's absolutely no grain requirement aside from 51% corn. The rest is up to the distiller. Same thing with Scotch. Only requirement they have, or if you read the website, British government website, is it has to be 2 types of whiskey: grain whiskey and single malt. However you want to construct that is your business. Okay. And if you crossed the bridge into Windsor, Canada, and went to their distillery, because I believe there's a big distillery there, you could make a bourbon there, and you could not call it bourbon because it's made less than 1 mile, or even if it's less than 1 mile from the U.S. border, technically it's no longer bourbon. So a lot of this stuff is just technical details, not practical details. All right. And talking about practicality, is there much difference between these two? Actually, no. The differences are so fine, so minimal, and if you so irrelevant, oh, I'll buy that. So which one should you buy? Whatever one's cheap, the cheapest one you can find. Now, some people take issue with plastic. Got you there. So then you might just buy the one that's bottled in glass. They're the same price anyway. And in fact, Kentucky Gold is a little cheaper because I don't think Classic Club, if you find it at Total Wine, is going to be $6.99 unless they got a sale. They do run sale. But this was not a sale price. This was just a regular price on the shelf, $6.99. Now, you say that's really low. You're right. It's extremely low. And they go lower. I was at Albertsons and they had Canadian Crest for $5.99. Now, after the tariffs, that'll go up. And 75 South, I think, was $6.99. Now, you say $5.99. You're thinking about the cost of production, then the aging, then the bottling, then shipping it across the border, either on a train or in an 18-wheeler all the way to Kentucky. I think that's where they bottle it, actually, in Kentucky. And then they distribute it out to different areas like Louisiana, Tennessee, Florida. All of that cost involved, and it's still only $5.99. So that tells us something about the quality of the ingredients. And it does Canadian Crest have a nasty flavor or anything? No, it doesn't. Not much of a flavor, but it's not bad, like offensive, like you drink it and you're gagging. Okay. It seems to be pretty popular. Now, of course, if you go to Albertsons, I shouldn't say of course, because why would that be? Some stores don't do that. But if you go to Albertsons, they got Canadian Crest for when you really don't want to spend much money. But then they go higher grade on that. They go into like Canadian, they call it Canada Reserve, I think, Canadian Reserve, and it's like an 8-year. Then there's one that's like 12 years, and they're more expensive. They're not going to be that cheap at all. And it's from the same people, you know, the Sazerac company, using alias names, because there's a distillery in Canada called Sazerac Canada. It's in Montreal. They do the same thing for Winn-Dixie, same thing. They got their low-grade WD Liquors Winn-Dixie Canadian blended whiskey, which I would not recommend, even though it's $14.99 for this huge jug bottle. They've got another brand from the same people called Canadian Peak. Not plastic bottles, glass. Not super cheap, aged. And then there's I think there's two levels of Canadian Peak. There's like, is it Canadian Peak or is it Canadian? Copper Peak, I think it's called. It's something like that. I think they're trying to make it look like that one from Niagara Falls area. But I never bought it yet, but it's a little pricier. You know, those will be more in the $20 or $25 range. They're trying to go head to head with Crown Royal. I don't know if it's selling, but yeah. So is Sazerac sort of smart about that? And Heaven Hill probably does the same thing. Yeah, I guess they're smart. They got their super low budget products for people that just ain't gonna spend much. Then they got their more developed products for people that would spend more and try to get a little bit more out of it, a little nicer product. Same thing at Rouse's. They've got Seagram's. Seagram's, what is that called from Canada? Seagram's VO. Yeah, the VO. They got Seagram's VO. Thurns has it too. VO Gold. Now, VO Gold is a higher grade. It's age 8 years, not 6. But you can still find it at $22.99. True story. And then now there's the VO Black, 90 proof. You know where they're going with that. They're trying to compete head to head with Crown Royal. Probably won't make much impact, but it's there. There's even the VO Apple, once again, going against Crown Royal Apple. But honestly, I don't see a lot of people buying Crown Royal Black. Do you ever see that? I don't see that. I've even tried to talk to some people that are Crown Royal devotees, like they're devoted to Crown Royal. They'll never deviate. I know people. There's people I work with. They're getting off of work on Friday. They're buying their bottle of Crown. There's no question about that. And I told him, I said, Glenn, you ought to try this Crown Royal Black. It's 90 proof, and it's aged in charred oak barrels. I got a blank look. He said, yeah, I probably wouldn't like that. Probably wouldn't like that. Based on what? Because you drank Crown Royal since 1983. But how you know you're not going to like it? That's the kind of stuff that just confounds me. I can't understand that. I'm not going to try it because I'm not going to like it because that's really it's like circular logic. It's like illogical logic. I'm not going to like it because I'm not going to like it. That's the basis. That's what you're basing it on. I'm not going to like it because I'm not going to like it. Makes no sense. But I just dropped it. I was like, okay. I was trying to encourage you. You ought to try Crown Royal Reserve. It's a much better product. It's unbelievable compared to Crown. No, ain't gonna happen. Good morning, Louisiana Liquor Reviews. Have a good and productive day. I am going to try to do both. I have some cleaning stuff to do, and and tonight at 6:30 Eastern, we're doing Fandango. We can't do Fandango Friday. We're doing Thundering Thursday. Thundering Thursday. Same principle: liquor or liqueur or ready to drink canned cocktails or bottle cocktails. They do make bottled, like On the Rocks, which are very nice. So I'm going to bring another Winn-Dixie brand. I'm trying to make the long march through Winn-Dixie. Purchased by Aldi and then sold by Aldi 11 months later. Crazy story there. I'm going to bring the rum. I think I brought the silver rum last time, right? So I'll bring the gold. I have to go back and look because I'm confused now, but doesn't much matter. Then I'll bring the tequilas next couple of times, and then I'll be done with it, thankfully. I brought the scotch. Never tasted anything like that, except for Legacy Scotch, which tasted like the same product in different labels, and I do not recommend it unless you like caramel candy. I do like Werther's Original, but don't think Scotch is supposed to taste like that. I think this is the Classic Club because my recollection was a little bitey. It's all whiskey, no grain spirits, big deal, but that's it. I got it. So Classic Club, their tagline, instead of saying mellowed in oak, their tagline should be "It bites back." Classic Club, it bites back. I don't know if that would be a good selling point, but be unique. Okay, so anyway, the winner is Kentucky Gold. Man, 6 years ago, I would have said, never would have dreamed I'd be saying that 7 years ago. But okay, these things could improve, but now I get the impression it's been discontinued since they don't list it anymore. But they're not listing a lot of things. This is another point. Heaven Hill went from having a list that was like pages long, and now their product specification is like just a few lines long. I'm thinking, could they have cut back their production that much? Well, yes, they could have, because they might have been producing stuff that wasn't moving. Good point. Or could they have just decided not to list things they didn't feel like listing? That's another thing they could have done, because Sazerac certainly did that. So the conclusion there is up in the air. We don't know. I could call them and ask them. You know what? Maybe I will. I'm always embarrassed to call these companies, or like shy. I'm like shy to call them. Like, I might think things about me, like, why would he call about this product? Is he crazy? I'm always thinking they would think that. People call us about larceny and old Fitzgerald, the $75 bottle. They don't call about this, but oh well. Sazerac, they're never like that. When I call Buffalo Trace, they're always like, oh yeah, let's talk about Kentucky Dale, and like they want to go into all this detail about it. I'm like, man, that is like the most low grade product, and they just sit there and just talk about it. So they have a different approach for sure. when I watched the Heaven Hill video, they seem ashamed about it. Like, oh yeah, we we make those blended with. All right, anyway, but whatever the case, the winner, the clear. I said a clear winner. To me, it's just clearly better. Kentucky Gold, smoother, has more vanilla flavor, could be flavored, and it's just a nicer product. But I wouldn't be running out to give it as a graduation or wedding gift. You know, we want to keep these things within context. All right, so Kentucky Gold, not exactly gold. Maybe they should rename it Kentucky Bronze. That might be a more, you know, not gold or silver, but maybe Kentucky Bronze. But yeah. Anyway, they took over the trademark, so that's what it was since 1956. Take care, everybody. Bye bye.